Hello everyone, welcome to Top 5 Darkest. I'd like to start this video with a little explanation on the reasoning behind this video and why this will make our fourth video on the subject of skinwalkers. First of all, we've been aware for a while that skinwalkers as a topic of conversation is a really popular subject on YouTube overall and for us as a channel. Now, as much as we're in favour of bringing our content to the attention of as many people as possible, we're also conscious of the risk of saturating the channel with the same content every few videos. So the best way we came up with to address both of these points is to make this video, which will aim to be as thorough and concise as we can possibly make it, so that we cover all of the information available at the time of writing, and if we ever do address this topic again at a later date, it will be because new information, reports, or even evidence has been made available online. With that out of the way, I'd like to say just a couple of other bits before we start. First of all, the previous video we uploaded stated we would be trying to create more content for 2018, and unfortunately ended up being another year of nothing from us. We're really sorry for how that turned out, but hope you understand how tricky it is to balance a YouTube channel with personal lives, especially when writing, researching, and editing these kinds of videos can take a long enough time as to be very difficult to fit around a full-time work schedule. To combat this, we've expanded the channel's team. For the first year, the channel consisted only of myself and the channel's editor. Between the pair of us, we had to handle absolutely everything. Research, writing, narration, editing, image sourcing, background audio, and all the other behind-the-scenes things that needed to be done. For 2019, we are now working with another 2 team members. The plan is that this will allow us to begin production on multiple videos each week while expanding the type of content we produce. The videos will be split between myself and our new narrator, so nothing major is changing in that sense. We just wanted to give you a heads up about an additional voice on the channel. Secondly, we really want to start interacting with you all on a regular basis. We try to monitor the video comments as much as we can, but it feels a little impersonal. If you have any suggestions as to what you might like us to do in regard to a community interaction, please let us know in the comment section. We'll be happy to chat about any suggestions, so please drop us a comment. Okay, that's about everything we wanted to say here. Sorry for the long preamble. Enjoy the video. Skinwalkers, Goatmen, Fleshgaits, and shapeshifters. These creatures have gathered a rapidly increasing popularity on the internet in recent years, and for very good reason. The stories and accounts associated with them are nothing short of terrifying, and are steeped in a rich history of reports which is showing no signs of letting up. The term skinwalker is used an awful lot in these stories, appearing sometimes to be a fallback name to describe something which has the attributes of a number of creatures and cryptids, but is sometimes a cause for confusion due to the word's origins in Native American folklore. To clarify, the word skinwalker is used in this video to describe a shape-shifting entity commonly encountered in the wilderness and deserts of the United States, and not in relation to the Native American tales of skinwalkers as a human being well versed in the mystic art of taking the shape of animals through the use of hunted animal skins. Many arguments are made online regarding the correct use of this word when discussing the more popular topic of shape-shifting cryptids, and so we'd like to clarify this now to avoid any confusion later on. We are aware this word may be used incorrectly, but we are addressing it using the terms most common to anyone interested in the topic. As with all stories of the paranormal, skinwalkers appear to follow a rather strict pattern of behaviour, and most stories play out in much the same way despite any location changes or the situation. One might argue that the reports are fueled by existing information regarding the creature, and this is why there are strong similarities between cases. The counter to that point would be that they are animals of some description, and have survival instincts and behavioural patterns which have worked for them time and time again, and so there is little reason to deviate from what works. In this video, we take a more in-depth look at skinwalkers in an attempt to cover as much information as possible on the topic and act as a reference for anyone interested in the topic. Let's begin. We'll start by going over a little bit about what an average skinwalker encounter usually entails. The stories online have a lot of variances, with some ranging from a few unusual sounds following a group of people through the woods, all the way up to an actual physical encounter involving physical attack and the attempt to take the place of a member of the group after taking their shape. The recorded points we found in these stories are as follows: noises in foliage following a group or around a campsite, the smell of rotting meat and or blood, twisted animal calls or vocal sounds coming from the surrounding area, imitation of human speech, usually things which were said earlier in the day, calls for help from outside the camp, suggesting an injured person, Sightings of an unusually large animal like a dog or deer. A large animal chasing a car faster than it should be able to move. Seeing an animal over and over, moving strangely or standing on its hind legs. Encountering what looks like a mass of mixed animal parts and hair, vaguely human-shaped. Losing a party member in the woods, having them return quiet and behaving strangely. Said party member appearing to struggle to understand questions and mimicking body language, speech patterns, and facial expressions. Not every encounter involves the points listed previously, but everything available to read online utilizes these points between them. While it is difficult to ascertain the accounts as legitimate, as stated before, the similarity in events lends some credence to the existence of creatures like the Skinwalker, and the displays of intelligence are unnerving to say the least. One big question we see a lot online is why do they stalk and attack people? It's a tough question to answer, as one would assume something that does indeed seem to almost hunt people would operate in an area with much more prey rather than the wilderness. But if you consider the many accounts of strangely shaped animals or haphazardly mixed animal parts appearing to be an entire being, it begins to make sense that humans are hunted only as a part of its game. Animals would be its primary target, most likely for food, but also, for lack of a better word, as a source of shapes it can take on as disguise or for ease of movement. We hear a lot in these reports of what sounds like human speech being imitated or copied during an encounter, which would serve as a very useful tool for luring people away from the relative safety of their camps. When you consider the more extreme accounts of a skinwalker taking the place of a member of a group, things become much more unsettling. Sitting and watching a group of people interacting with each other serves little purpose other than to learn how it should behave around humans. This could be due to one of two possibilities. Either it is helpful in directly engaging people as it finds them, or its intent is in fact to move closer to a more populated area where it could move freely within a society. A few of the more frightening cases tell of the skinwalker joining a group of people in place of a missing friend from the group, but silently moving its lips in time with another person's speech, copying body language and facial expressions, or when spoken to directly, simply repeating back what was said to it. While these actions will almost certainly out it as an imposter, it is displaying behaviour which begins to stray away from gathering useful skills for hunting humans, and instead is definitely more telling of a creature whose goal is to blend in with people. Imitating calls for help in a human voice makes sense if your intent is to bring a person close to you for attack. Learning social cues and mimicking natural expression and speech patterns is a much darker pursuit. Another of the more popular questions we hear is how do you hunt one? The short answer would be you don't. The long answer would involve recounting a lot of the stories about people who claim to have fired a gun at these creatures only to have it do little to nothing in the way to harm it. The best results recorded so far have served no other purpose than to scare it off for a short period of time, only to have it return and begin a much more aggressive form of interaction. Most of the people who say they have fired on a skinwalker during an encounter recount a lot of the low-ranking phenomena listed in the points raised previously. Most of these acts of self-defense have been performed when faced with the creature in animal form. One that comes to mind at the time of writing regards a hunter who fired on a deer which was approaching him walking on its hind legs. The man described a sense of deep fear while the animal was approaching him, not something he had experienced as a hunter, especially not from a deer. And if memory serves, the man claimed he fired as an accident, being almost frozen in place at the time. Pulling the trigger was an unintended action brought on by trembling hands. The deer was hit and ran off, switching between 2 legs and 4 as it moved, as if it were trying to find a less painful way to run, and the horrific screeching sound it made when hit was akin to an even mix of human scream and unrecognizable animal calls. To put it bluntly, and hopefully addressing a lot of the comments we see on the channel and on the comments we see elsewhere online, the general consensus is that these creatures are hunters, and whilst camping with a firearm is a sensible idea in regard to defending from a number of wild animal attacks, entering the woods with the intent of hunting one of these creatures is at best inadvisable. Information is scarce on the extent of their physical strength, but they clearly possess abilities and intelligence that would make hunting them dangerous, and given the fact that the deer mentioned before came back to torment the hunter, a gunshot doesn't appear to do much to harm it. I'd like to address some of the attributes associated with skinwalkers now, and I'll start by talking about the smell that so many people report being part of an encounter. It is always described as being like rotten meat or blood, as if this is the closest way to describe it to someone who hasn't been around it during an event. There is absolutely no solid evidence as to why this scent accompanies a skinwalker, but theories range from a territorial mark to a natural excretion and even a byproduct of its shapeshifting abilities. People have noted seeing piles of animal skin and body parts, often appearing to have been shed, as if the animal has removed its skin itself. Considering these sightings are always described as mammalian skin, like deer or dog, shedding doesn't make any sense in the natural way of thinking. But when applied to the shapeshifting abilities of the Skinwalker, it would serve as a relatively fast way to change its shape and appearance, yet with no need for the discarded skin, it is left as waste around the woods. The shedding is of note here, as one would assume it to leave behind bodily fluids on the tissue beneath the shed skin and on the body of the newly shaped creature. Now, if you take into account and perhaps assume a lack of grooming between shedding, the creature would constantly be coated in the residue from a shed skin, being matted into fur and stuck to its body. This would account for the smell of rotten or organic material. The smell of blood can also be addressed in a similar way. We have no in-depth accounts of what happens when the creature changes shape, so it may not be a far reach to assume body parts, organs, bone, and the like would be removed as needed when shapeshifting. If the transformation process is particularly violent, then perhaps the forcible removal of material could be a factor, as well as the spilled blood associated with the forceful removal of a body part. To summarise, there is too little information about the transformation process to do anything more than theorise on what happens or how it is performed, but in my opinion, likely to be as flawed as anyone else's, residue from shedding skin and body parts could be a primary factor. The shapeshifting itself is addressed mostly in the section previously discussed, but something comes to mind regarding a fictional description of a werewolf transformation, stating that with the size and shape change comes incredible stresses on parts of the body. Each time a transformation occurs, bones are broken, elongated and reset, organs fail and restart, including the heart, tendons are stretched, muscles are forcibly reshaped, broken down and healed all in a matter of minutes. The process would be nothing short of excruciating, and the energy needed by an organism to perform such a change is unfathomable. To change shape and size on a regular basis, the Skinwalker must operate on a completely different set of biological rules or metabolize in a completely different way to anything else in nature. In short, theories are the only thing we can use in describing the way a Skinwalker achieves these actions, and until we observe one, we'll never know how it happens. Now, some of the accounts of Skinwalker phenomena don't take place in the woods or around camping trips or hiking groups. In fact, a growing number of the stories available online seem to take place around people's houses, which back onto woodland. The main difference between events which take place in the wilderness and on a property is that the encounters are a lot more focused on tormenting the people within the house than attempting to draw them out into the woods. Many of these stories mention noises outside, and when a window is checked to investigate the sound, the creature is stood out in the open staring in at the house, almost always in animal form, but as we've mentioned a lot in this video, usually standing on two legs, giving it a very strange and unnerving appearance when seen at night. Reports go on to talk about the Skinwalker scratching or banging on doors on the side of the house, screaming and mimicking human speech, scaling the side of the building and walking around on the roof. A lot of these cases mention that the sound of the creature on the roof seemed to be following the footsteps of someone inside the house, as though it were following them without being able to see where they were going. If the property happens to be part of a ranch or a farm, livestock is said to be incredibly scared of the Skinwalker's presence, and a lot of the time, dogs and cats are said to be mutilated and left around the outside of the house. This behaviour differs greatly compared to the encounters in the woods, as the actions taking place on the property seem to be more malicious and to intentionally frighten the occupants instead of hunting or integrating into a social group. These events are often reported to be very short-lived, lasting only an hour or two at most, and if the residents decide to arm themselves and confront the creature, it will usually retreat back into the area it came from, unwilling to engage people despite appearing to be more than capable of doing so. This has led some people to theorise that there is an element of toying with people for fun, as no attempt to harm anyone is ever claimed within these events. In closing, we've done our best to make this video as all-encompassing as possible with the available information to be found. While a lot of this subject is unfortunately theory and individual accounts, the fact remains that these instances appear to be increasing in frequency, and seem to report the creatures becoming more and more bold in their interactions with humans. We hope you enjoyed this video and learned something about the phenomena of Skinwalkers. Don't forget to like and subscribe for our future content, and let us know what you think in the comments section. Until next time.